chat me when you're live. Okay, we are all set. At 7 o'clock, I will open tonight's meeting of the Board of Selectmen dated Tuesday, July 21st, 2020. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel. Town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent its spread. All town facilities are open, but by appointment only. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. This meeting will be broadcast live through local access cable, on Facebook Live on the Public Access Facebook page, and will be able to be found on the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel within 24 hours after the meeting has concluded. If you wish to participate in this meeting, it is a Zoom meeting, so on any of your smart devices, phones, tablets, computers, launch Zoom, and we are webinar ID 909-174-0347. If you do not have access to a smart device and you wish to participate by phone, you can do so by dialing the toll-free number 888-475-4499. And again, the webinar ID is 909-174-0347. If you are in the Zoom app and you wish to speak during those appropriate times in the meeting, please locate the raise your hand function. If you are on the telephone and wish to raise your hand using the telephone, you will do so by dialing *9 to request to speak, and I will call on you at the appropriate time. This is a roll call attendance. I'm just going to call people in the order I see them on my screen. Mr. Dwyer.
Here.
Ms. Adams. Oh, is muted. Hold on.
Here.
Mr. Marino.
Present.
Mr. Jeffries.
Present.
And present for me. Madam Town Manager, are you with us tonight?
I'm here.
Excellent. Okay, we will start. I'm not even going to attempt the screen share. We're just going to go straight to Katie with her flag to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. Here we are. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we will go to public comment. Any public comment from the board this evening? Seeing none. Any public comment from the public this evening?
If I may,
Yes.
we invited our.
Hold on a second. I have Rhonda Licio who wants to ask something. So. Go ahead,
Hi,
Rhonda.
this is Rhonda Licio. Hi, Rhonda Licio, 181 Reservoir Road. I just had a quick public comment. Every time there is a heavy rainfall event, the town stormwater enters our property in two locations, the driveway and an area to the south beyond the driveway. This unpredictable physical trespass, use, and taking of our property is something I have privately and publicly voiced opposition to for years, and it has occurred as recently as twice in the past week. The DPW has stated our property is a problem and needs to be altered. More specifically, we were told to fill in our driveway. We had planned to raise the driveway and pitch it toward a 115-foot vegetated swale we plan to construct along the south side of it and the garage. When we became aware our projects require review by the Conservation Commission, I asked the conservation agent if we should submit the garage and driveway plans together. He recommended filing the garage first, which we did. Obviously, even he did not predict the majority of the commissioners would use their discretion to seek to delay and obstruct our plans. Now we are in an impossible situation where one town department, the DPW, has dictated an action necessary to protect our property, and another town entity, the Conservation Commission, is delaying and obstructing us from doing so. Its decision to force us to refile our project through the state, which is backlogged due to COVID, will result in an indefinite delay to our projects and an increase in costs, which we have been unable to calculate because we have no idea what exactly will be required for these filings. We are outraged such contradictory orders from two town departments can exist in the same town, and that the burden is placed solely on the property owner to try to sort out and navigate the contradictions between them. 2 weeks ago, I inquired if it would be possible to refile our entire project as one to the Conservation Commission, or file the driveway project locally through the process we just went through in order to save time and possibly money. I have received no response. Our goal is to use, protect, and improve our property from an environmental standpoint as soon as possible. It seems to us the town should have the same goal, but our questions remain unanswered. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take those offline, and we'll talk to the town manager after this meeting or during the week. So to see where this is, I'll have the town manager and ask the DPW director, and I'll try to contact the Conservation Commission. Mr. Doran, I understand, was trying to get my attention. So, Mr. Doran. You have the floor, Mr. Doran.
Good evening. David Doran from 7 Tri-Town Drive. The last 2 weeks I've heard the discussions from the Board of Selectmen about the Cemetery Commission and the DPW. However, I understand that's all that's happened. No phone calls were made yet to the Commissioner of Cemeteries to get together and discuss the issue. I have a concern that this is going to be one of those issues that you talk about and then you forget and everyone wants it to go away. We have an issue here of 2 departments having control over 2 cemeteries in Lunenburg. The Cemetery Commission having control over the regulations and policies, and the DPW having control over the maintenance of the cemeteries. I understand from one of your meetings that a calendar is being devised for when jobs need to be done at the cemetery. However, if the DPW has important jobs to come up, such as redoing the streets, updating bridges, or other construction, we know that the cemeteries are going to go on the back burner. I had a meeting with Jack, the DPW director, about a year ago regarding this situation, and even at that time, he told me how short he was with people, that he didn't have enough to take care of the jobs that he had. It's not appropriate to keep adding more jobs to the DPW empire with lack of help. I understand the charter allows the town manager to delegate who maintains the cemetery. You have a cemetery commission. Let them do their job and run the cemetery. Having an employee work for 2 departments is not good for morale. The employee maintains the cemetery for the DPW and regulates what can be done in the cemetery for the commission. It's certainly not good to have a cemetery commission email the DPW every week or once a month asking when the job will get done. I'm really asking not to keep this situation tabled. Let's get it done. Put the maintenance under the cemetery commission. It's just common sense to have everything under one department. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Dwyer, you had your hand up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make a brief comment in regard to Ms. Licio's comment. I understand her frustration. I'm also a member of the Conservation Commission, and I just implore her to continue to work with our conservation agent to try and address her filing in an expeditious manner. I understand from the last couple of meetings we have on her property that she's frustrated, but I just implore her to continue to reach out to our conservation agent, Matt Morrow, and I'm sure that we can get it taken care of in a efficient manner for her.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, Madam Town Manager, you were about to introduce other people here.
Yes. So with tonight being Chief Jim Marino's last Board of Selectmen's meeting as the police chief, we asked our legislators to come tonight to say a few words about Jim, and I'll have some words after that as well. So Senator Tran is with us, Representative Sina, and Representative Hay.
Okay, I think Representative Hay keeps dropping off and on here, so he may be having internet issues. So let's work our way up the houses here. So let's start with Representative Sena.
Good evening, everyone. This is probably my first Board of Selectmen meeting officially as a state rep. So I just want to say a few words. I'm here tonight basically to thank Jim Marino, should say Chief Marino, for his service to the town of Lunenburg. It seems it's been 40 years, if I believe 40 years of service. Is that correct?
Yeah, a little more than 40.
And you graduated from the Lunenburg High School?
Well, that's a long story, but leave it at that.
1973. I got a little bio from my age. I just want to say thank you. You know, I know as you retired, your work still continue. You're still going to be, you know, hopefully in the area, and I'm sure people will be reaching out for some of your advice. So I just want to say thank you. And you know, my office is open. I'm here also to share my, you know, contact information. I know during COVID, it's a little hard given that our phone numbers at the State House are not really working well. But I've shared my cell phone numbers, you know, my personal cell with many constituents. Right now we're debating a police reform bill. And also there is an effort to approve a driver's license for undocumented immigrants. We filed an amendment today in the House and has about 63 co-sponsors. So that's moving as of right now. We had a meeting with the governor earlier today around 2 o'clock. And, you know, we talked about economic development, housing, and also about the police reform bill. So that's where things are at the House right now. I just wanted to give an update and also be here to say, you know, thank you to Chief Marino. Thank you. And thank you, Heather, for the invitation.
Welcome.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you very much.
Let's see, do we have, I don't think Representative Hay is back with us yet. So Senator Tran, you have the floor.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. And good evening, Heather. Thank you very much for this invitation. Good evening, Chief. How are you?
Good. I'm very well. Thank you.
It's good
How
to
are
see you.
Good to see you as well.
Chief Marino, you know, I like to begin by saying that I want to thank you for your service to law enforcement and to our community, keeping us safe for 41 years, I believe.
Right.
Your unbelievable career started in 1979.
Correct.
And 1979, where was I? You know, I'm trying to think here. let's just say that you have a lot of experience, Jim. So I want to thank you for all the experience that you have, for everything that you've done for the community, not just for Lunenburg, but for the whole entire district that I serve. I am incredibly grateful to know you, and I am very thankful for your friendship. Congratulations on your retirement, and congratulations on your election to the select board. I look forward to working with you on this level. And again, Jim, thank you very much, and hope to see you soon.
Well, thank you very much for saying all that, and thank you for your friendship as well. And a little known fact, Dan, I didn't graduate from Lunenburg High School, actually. I was at the superintendent's last meeting, faculty meeting, and in front of the whole school, I admitted that I wasn't a Lunenburg High School graduate. And as a matter of fact, I left Lunenburg High School when I was a junior, and I went to Monty Tech the first year it opened. In fact, it was actually not open, and so they had classes in Fitchburg at the old Fitchburg Trade School, and then the school, Monty Tech, actually opened halfway through the year. And at that time, I had a driver's license, and I was a motorhead. I was in the auto shop, and they wouldn't let me drive my car to school because they said it was too dangerous. That was everybody. All the kids were not allowed. None of the kids were allowed to drive their cars to school. So I used to sneak my car to school and park in the faculty parking lot, so that I thought, if I park in the faculty parking lot, I won't stick out that much. But it didn't work that long. I worked for about 2 weeks, and finally the principal was waiting for me to arrive one morning, and he said that I was suspended for driving my car to school. And I said, well, I'd like to quit school. And I quit. And I went down to the Learning Center in Worcester, and I took the GED exam. And the woman down there said, well, you don't need any tutoring, so just go right up to Mount Wachusett and take the exam, which I did, and I passed it. And I started taking classes at Mount Wachusett that day. I signed up for classes. And I had, since then, I had gotten appointed as a reserve officer in 1979, and Ann Hall, who was a selectman at the time, said to me, you know, continue going to school. And I told her, and I promised her I would I said, I'll achieve a master's degree in your lifetime, and which I did. And I hope she's listening to this today. But that's the story about Lunenburg High School. But I've been here all my life, and of course the school was always, was always loyal to the Lunenburg school system, and still am. But thank you for the sentiment. I really appreciate it. It's been a long haul. I'm glad you didn't bring up qualified immunity, though, while you were talking about policing. Thank you.
That would take us all night.
Not without the blood pressure machine being hooked up. So.
Right. We'll have that discussion later, though.
Thank you, Senator Tran. I don't see Representative Hay joining back in. So, Katie, you had your hand up.
Oh, sure. I just wanted to, give a brief thank you to Chief Marino. For me, I also grew up in Lunenburg, and so my first experience was in 5th grade. At the time, he was working as the DARE officer to work against drugs in school. So when I started advocating against marijuana in town, I felt like, oh, I'm keeping kids off drugs, or maybe. And I always appreciated his advocacy for things like trades, and has spoken at the school, not only himself having a high education, but, admiring all different avenues. As a chief, I feel like he was very responsive to people's advocacies or concerns. So when I first encountered town government, it was advocating for student safety and security, and working on hopefully having a school resource officer and increased security cameras. And so when I was in meeting as a parent, I said, well, where do I take my advocacy from here? I have no problem getting involved and following through with something. And he said, well, you can simply public comment at town hall. So there's a story most people probably don't know. So my first time going to public comment at town hall, was mentorship from Chief Marino, so everybody can thank him. That sort of led to me becoming engaged in town government. That was the one topic that brought me in, but then sitting through so many finance committee meetings and eventually going to every selectmen's meeting for over a year just to follow through on different things. It led to a lot of study of town government. The planning board is another. Years ago, I went to most planning board meetings every week to sort of teach myself town government. But I wanted to thank Chief Marino because whether it's a simple thing like that, he I think was always there in the community to help people, advise people. And we have a wonderful police department. It's full of wonderful officers. I've always had good experiences. They ran a self-defense class. There were coffees with the chiefs where you could go in and talk about potholes and other things that maybe weren't his jurisdiction, but he helped and listened. So thank you. I mean, I think 40 years applying yourself to the community is an accomplishment. Most people don't work 40 years in one place, so that's amazing. And thank you for all you've done.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all your help as well. Your support was very instrumental in getting us a school resource officer on board, and obviously I'm very grateful for that and always will be. And just in general, just being, as you said, you have to be concerned about everybody's concerns, and cases like something we just heard, Rhonda, Alicia, or Mike. Those issues we have to work together. It takes a village to raise a child, as they say, but we all have to stick together on issues like that, and we got to try to resolve that as Todd alluded to. Those are important things, and that's what we're in business for here. That's what we're supposed to do. That should be always our policy, to make things happen as easily and so forth as possible for our residents. So thank you for saying that, Katie. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, truly, thank you.
Madam Town Manager.
I just had a few words myself too. And so although we'll be seeing Chief Marino at all the Board of Selectmen meetings, I felt we couldn't let this tonight pass without saying a few words about the legacy he's leaving behind and our gratitude for his 40 plus years serving the town of Lunenburg. So last week I announced the retirement of our DPW director, Jack Rodwinks, and talked about when I first met Jack. Similarly, I met Chief Marino during my interview process in 2016. And prior to this meeting, we scheduled this time to meet that was expected to last about an hour. The day of our meeting, Chief Marino and the lieutenant at that time, Mike Luth, took the time to drive me around town to all the different areas in town. I immediately felt at ease with Chief Marino, as he has the natural ability to make you feel like an old friend. Looking back, that day was evidence that he has fostered an inclusive environment and mentors his staff so that they can realize their full potential and move up through the ranks. Chief Marino, including Lieutenant Luth in our meeting that day, is one example of how he has fostered career development, coached and mentored the officers in his department. Also noteworthy of that day was that at a meeting that was expected to last an hour, I think it was 2+ hours. So besides his wealth of knowledge about the town, Chief Marino has a knack for telling stories, as evidenced tonight, and never makes you feel rushed, even though his schedule is very demanding. Chief Marino has all the qualities you find in good leaders, and especially the leader of a police department. He exemplifies honesty, integrity, commitment, empathy, humility. He communicates well with his staff and other departments, and he inspires confidence in our police department. Besides all of these qualities, for anyone that didn't already know this, his knowledge about cars is second to none, and he is a heck of a good mechanic. So thank you, Chief Marino, for choosing a career in law enforcement, and specifically in Lunenburg. The town has been fortunate to have you for the last 40 years, serving and protecting the residents of Lunenburg, and we are eternally grateful.
Thank you very much, Heather. And let me just say a few words about you, if you don't mind. One of my clearest memories is after driving you all around town, is being on that, the hiring committee or the search committee, is listening to your presentation that you were hired. And Jack and I both had the same comment. She hit a home run, and anyways, I'm a little sad that I can't participate in your evaluation because I think the department heads know more about your day-to-day activities than anybody else. And so, maybe it's a good thing because I'd give you 100 on the whole thing, having worked so close with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Only for time's sake, I think I will hold off till you're no longer a chief. I'll save my comments for your life as a normal citizen. Not that being a chief isn't normal, but it's certainly a specific position. So, and then I can ask you about the change in authority that you now have. So between selectman and chief of police. So I do, of course, thank you, but I will have more comments on our 1st of August meeting, Chief.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very
Mr.
much.
McDonald.
Good evening, guys. How you doing? Jim, I just want to tell you, I think you're the best chief we ever had. I love working with you. You're so dedicated to this town. And can you guys hear me before we go on?
Yes.
Yes.
And Jim, you and I have done a lot of things together, all for the community. And you know what? I love you. And I wish you weren't leaving, but I do wish the lieutenant next year gets the job and does the same thing and carry on with you. You've done nothing but the best for this town. And I hope the town people realize what you did, because I sure do. And I also want to thank Heather for, hopefully you won't cry tonight, but I just want to say thank you. And hopefully you have the guidance to guide through and get a good replacement for Jim. But Jim, I owe you, and I love you, man. Good luck to you.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Dave.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, Mr. McDonald.
Good night.
Okay. All right. So now you just have to follow through on actually retiring, by the way. So maybe that's why I'm waiting till you're actually retired. But Lieutenant Gamel got a good earful of what it's like to be chief here and what people are expecting. So maybe we can, well, I don't think we have any announcements, right? And we don't have any appointments except our interview. So I'm going to go right to the ratification of the town manager appointment of interim police chief, Lieutenant Thomas Gamel. Madam Town Manager.
Thank you. So this is a good segue from Chief Marino's words about his retirement. So as I reported to the board at your July 7th meeting, I would be presenting an appointment for interim police chief that would be effective upon Chief Marino's retirement and until the position is permanently filled. So tonight I am asking the board to ratify my appointment of Lieutenant Thomas Gamel as the interim police chief to be effective August 1st. Lieutenant Gamel began his law enforcement career in Hawaii in 1991 for the Honolulu Police Department, and in 1995 moved back to the mainland and served as a patrol officer in Pepperell from 1995 until 2000. He began his career in Lunenburg in 2000 as a patrol officer and moved up the ranks to sergeant in 2003 and has been the second in command as lieutenant since 2018. Lieutenant Gamel's formal education, lengthy career in law enforcement, his formal training, management experience, and mentoring under Chief Marino are a few of the reasons that make Lieutenant Gamel a natural choice for the interim police chief position. We have an unusual situation as we don't always have this opportunity to have access to the retiring chief, and he has promised that he will still be around to assist Lieutenant Gamel while he is interim chief. I see this as a seamless transition, and I'm pleased to present Lieutenant Gamel for this appointment. So I would ask for your ratification tonight.
Before we do that, I will open the floor for Lieutenant Gamel if he would like to say anything.
I would. Thank you, Mr. Alonso. First of all, I would like to thank Heather for this opportunity, and I'm very humbled by this. I'm humbled by everything that Chief has presented and what Heather has presented. When I started this career 20 years ago in the community, it gave me an opportunity to work in a community that I try to come back to when I first came back from Hawaii. And ever since I started here, Chief Marino has guided me, mentored me, and has been a friend to me. And it's big shoes to fill. It really is. But I am honored that I've been given this opportunity, and I hope I can follow in the footsteps that the chief has provided for me. And I would be remiss to say that and not recognize and thank the chief for his over 40 years of dedication to the community that he has served and loved and continues to serve. And I thank you for the opportunity.
So my only question to you is there any high school graduation story with you two that we need to know about?
No, but maybe coming back from Honolulu has been questioned a few times.
I remember being one of the people who asked you that.
Yes.
I would open it up to the board if they have any questions for the town manager or Lieutenant Gamel.
Obviously, Tom, I'll abstain from my involvement in this.
Ms. Adams.
I was just going to make a motion if we were ready, but I don't want to cut anybody off.
So does anybody, I mean, I agree with the town manager. It's obviously a very natural choice. Lieutenant Gamel has been with the force since 2000, so 20 years. Worked at every level except chief in that department. So certainly knows the ropes. Has the backing of the chief, has the ability to reference that as he sees necessary in the interim period. So to me, it's a natural choice. Having no other comments, go ahead, Ms. Adams.
Okay, sure. I'll make a motion that we ratify the town manager's appointment of Thomas Gamel as interim police chief.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just want to add as well that, certainly as Selectman Adams did, as met Chief in 5th grade, so did I. And as we sit here and think about that, that was quite some time ago. I think it often feels like it was yesterday, but that was some 20 plus years ago. And this has been quite, Chief, there's no question that Chief Marino has been an excellent chief for the town of Lunenburg. I know him and I have stayed in touch over the since I met him, since I was a kid. And I know that he's watched me grow up and certainly watched him go from being our DARE officer to the position he's in now. And, we see Lieutenant Gamel come up, I'm certainly very appreciative as well of Lieutenant Gamel's commitment and service to our community. I didn't realize that we shared that Hawaii link, that prior to moving to Lunenburg, I also lived in Honolulu, Hawaii, and I went to Pearl Harbor Elementary School. So that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Small world after all.
Yes, it is.
But I do think that you have great shoes that you're going to walk into. Chief Marino could not have been better at his job, and I know that puts a lot of weight on you. But certainly, I have no doubt that you're prepared and ready for the task.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, it's a roll call vote. Mr. Dwyer,
Aye.
Ms. Adams,
Aye.
Mr. Marino,
I abstain.
Mr. Jeffries,
Aye.
and an aye for me. Well, good luck in the new position. You've served the town well thus far. I have no doubts that you will continue that service going forward. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Congratulations, Tom.
Thank you, Chief, for everything. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, board.
I miss town hall where there'd be all these and clapping and standing up.
Yeah, there's no good photo ops. We could take a shot of the screen where everybody is in their little square, but it doesn't have the same effect.
And sometimes that was my favorite part up on stage. Like if people were watching at home, we sit there and it looks boring, but you knew when you had a good meeting because there could be like 20 officers there for an appointment of somebody. And so you got a sense of, what was going on. And so I truly missed that, because there was this behind the scenes at meetings moments where, sometimes there was one person in the room and sometimes there was 40. So this would have been a big night.
Hopefully soon enough, we'll be back.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've been told that because of connection issues, Representative Hay will not be joining us tonight. So I'm sure he will extend to you, Chief, his best wishes in person or in another form. Unfortunately, not here. Or maybe he'll wait for the August meeting when I say my remarks. So.
Okay, yeah, thank you. He has my cell phone number, although after that last conversation I had with him, I don't know if he'd call me back.
He'll search you out. He'll search you out. Don't worry. Okay, let's go to, well, before we go to the workshop, let's go just to the review changes in town charter, because that's a simple thing before we go to the workshop. So review changes in town charter that will go into effect upon passage by the state legislature. It's been noted, obviously, that the charter, the special legislation that we submitted to our delegation has gone through the Senate now, and it's now in the House for passage. And it was probably a good idea that we remind people what those changes would be once that gets approved, assuming it will get approved. So, Madam Town Manager, do you want to review this, or do you want me to review this, or?
First, since we have our Senator Tran and Representative Sina here, do you want to ask if there's any further updates? I think there was supposed to go before the orders of the day, and I don't know where that ended up.
I will unmute them again so they can. So Representative or Senator, is there any further word on the status of this special legislation? As I said, I believe it's gone through the Senate.
I don't know. I actually have to check. I did get an email, and my aide also, we wrote a letter, although we haven't submitted to the speaker yet. Is that correct, Daniel?
Yeah. So I'm Representative Sina's new legislative aide, and was just kind of figuring out who to send it to. But I believe we're sending a letter to House leadership, basically to make sure that it gets on the orders of the day, because it spent the month after going through, I think, Senate committee, basically, for it to get onto the orders of the day automatically. But I think it's kind of at the long end of a backlog of things for that. That's my understanding, at least. So I believe, I believe that we're going to be sending that letter real soon. But I also
I also wanted to find out what was the purpose of that the bill. If someone can explain that to me, since I'm taking ownership on this issue right now.
That's what this agenda item is about what those changes were. It was basically an amendment to the town charter that changed various sections. Not anything of any large note, but some minor changes. Madam Town Manager, do we want to go over what those are?
And I can just, yes, Chairman. But in essence, the charter requires a review every 10 years. And so the Charter Review Committee did a review, proposed changes to town meeting, which were approved. And therefore, that's why it's before the state legislature.
Is that something the board here supports? And is this something the town wants?
Yeah, it was voted at last, the annual town meeting of 2019, it was voted on.
Okay. So on that note, then we'll submit that letter. Then you can go ahead and submit it to the proper channels. I wanted to just understand what was this in regards to before I took any action, but we have drafted a letter.
Great.
So I believe part of the change to the chart is to recognize some of the new positions that the town created and was on the ballot for this past municipal election. that the charter was adopted in the Senate about a week and a half ago, and it was sent to the House, to the House Steering Committee. I believe I heard or read in the email from Representative Sina that the third reading in the House Steering Committee was passed, and now all the representative need to do is to ask the House Ways and Means to put it on the order of the day for the House to vote on. That should be pretty easy. Once the House vote on that, it should go back to the Senate for enactment. And then once the Senate vote on the enactment, then it should be done.
And it looks like we only have, is it 2 weeks, Senator Trent, to get all this done, or we may extend? I don't know.
No, this should be pretty easy. Order of the day, you can either get it on the informal or formal session. So you don't have to wait for the formal session. Just ask you can actually write the letter to the House Ways and Means Committee. Ask the chair to put on the order of the day agenda. I'm not sure when is your informal. Is it on?
We have formal tomorrow, but yeah, I will look into it and find out. It sounds like we don't have it to get it done right now. It may, if it can go through informal session, then it sounds like there's a way to get through it.
It's a pretty easy step. They should try to get it onto the agenda for tomorrow, order of the day, and just get it done with.
Yeah, obviously anything you could do because this has been 14 months, I guess now. So anything we can do to get it done would be appreciated.
Okay.
Ms. Adams.
Yes, I was just going to add, and it's basically the sentiment you said in the sense that this was passed, by the town of Lunenburg, these changes over a year ago, but they can't be implemented or acted on. So for example, just one, because it's fairly simple things, but one change was the Parks Commission has 3 members. The charter changed it that there would be a 5-member board. We can't create the 5-member board if the charter goes through the process. And so there's certain things like that where the town can't follow through with its discussed and chosen changes. And this process happens, and it seems like it's been an awfully long time. And so there's been citizens and members of other boards who are waiting for these changes so that they can act on them. So I think it's a simple thing, and it's something the town all voted through in 2019, and it's just caught up in some sort of dynamic process.
Absolutely. Certainly will do what I can. As you know, I'm inundated with, coming to office in the middle of a cycle, session, if I may say. So, navigating through the system, and also with, not being able to be there present with other peers and colleagues and being able to ask these questions. So I appreciate the feedback. So right now we're focused on the some other bill priorities, and I don't want to, ask something this week, but certainly, we'll do what I can in the near future to get this done. Right now we're moving through other key priorities for the entire state. So, but we'll make sure that, Lunenburg is heard at the state level. So.
And I just wanted to add, I muted myself and didn't realize I couldn't.
Yeah, I have control of the meeting.
Again. But basically, we're going to send the letter off to the, House Ways and Means and get this. Because I think, like Senator Tran said, it should be pretty simple and it won't get in the way of a lot of the other stuff we're doing. So I think, I'll be sending this off this evening. I've already got the letter drafted, just got to address it and send it. So we'll make sure this gets into the orders of the day.
Please keep me and the town manager informed about where that is so that
Absolutely
we follow it. Because as soon as it gets the proper seal of approval, we have people like Ms. Adams said, especially on the Parks Commission, who are just itching to get the other 2 members on board. So
will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Town Manager, do you want to run through or do you want me to run through the changes?
Whichever you prefer. I can go through them. There's a number of just clarifications, such as changing days to standard calendar days instead of number of days, items like that, as well as changing the name of Selectmen to Select Board, clarification within powers and duties under different committees, and as well as the town manager. Is there a certain section because the board has a complete draft of every single change that's being made in the charter. Did you want to go over certain sections?
So they had to be itemized from our town council before we could submit the special legislation. And there are 54 sections, the majority of them being very, either typos or very small changes. I don't know if we want to hit on all 54. So we can touch on some of the major ones. Let's see. And for the board members, it's in the Google Drive under whole room petition articles 35 and 36. That's the document. So we're clarifying the wording for quorum, which was unclear. We're adding sections about, I'm seeing section 2.7 about referrals. I don't have the full charter here in front of me.
The other document in your Google Drive is labeled Articles 35 and 36 Charter, and has a basically red line.
Is it a red line? Okay, let's go to that one then. So maybe I won't go to this one. Let's go to the red line one.
It shows in purple the typographical corrections and and brown.
So the big change is the Board of Selectmen is now going to be called the Lunenburg Select Board to make it gender neutral. So that's changed all throughout the charter. We made a change to the Finance Committee, so the Finance Committee members must be residents registered to vote in town. Before it used to be any resident, but now they have to be registered to vote. Scanning through, no big changes. So we appoint there was a clarity put into the appointments that are made by the selectmen that were unclear before because some of them overlap the appointments of the town manager. So it is clear that the selectmen appoint the town treasurer, the town collector, the director of municipal finance, the police chief, the fire chief, the director of Department of Public Works, council on aging director, and animal control officer, building commissioner, inspector of wires, and plumbing inspector. So the appointment of those get ratified. Sorry, the appointment of those are the town managers that get ratified by the Board of Selectmen. I apologize. It came at the end of the sentence. So all those positions now are the town managers with the select board able to ratify or veto them. Next change is to the Library Board of Trustees. There was a whole replacement of powers and duties. We got this, I believe the Charter Review Committee got this section directly from Mass General Law or Mass General Law recommendation. So that's what is put in there. The Park Commission is going to be increased from 3 to 5 members. And obviously we made changes to talk about how they'll get cycled through. Instead of 1 per year, there'll be the same cycle as other 5-member boards, 2 each year, and then the 3rd year, only 1 member will be up due. So the term will be 3 years, and every year there'll be 2 members 1 year, 2 members the next year, and 1 member on the 3rd year. That's the cycle. Appointments from the planning board, so they get to ratify the planning director, but the town manager, the planning director reports to the town manager, who will be responsible for all their responsibilities, duties, evaluation, and supervision. Same thing about the sewer business manager. Again, that gets ratified by the Board of Sewer Commissioners, but the actual position reports and is supervised and evaluated by the town manager. Again, powers and duties of the town manager. We talked about what entities they appoint. We went over that because it's referenced in the Board of Selectmen as well. We made a lot of some substantial changes, or not substantial, some substantive changes to the removal and suspension of the town manager by the Board of Selectmen, should that occur, and who gets notified and who presides over the hearing if there needs to be one. I'm hoping never have to try that section while I'm a selectman.
Or ever.
Oh, ever is a long time, but certainly not when I'm here. And I think everything else is either grammatical changes, textual changes. There are some clarifications of it, when agendas, about when, 48 hours, what does that include? Does it include Saturdays or Sundays and legal holidays? Just some things that were unclear in the original charter that we, through our town council and through the review process, needed to be further defined or honed. There was a whole section called the enforcement of charter provisions and town general bylaws that was added, section 711, that goes to the duty of the town manager. And I think that covers everything. Did I miss anything that you see, Madam Town Manager?
No, you covered everything today.
So again, the substantive parts are Park Commission has 5 members, Library Board of Trustees has a whole new chapter. I mean, again, more codified in what their powers and duties are. Everything else is mainly housekeeping, and then the change of the Board of Selectmen to the Select Board. So now we get to redo all of our stationery that have to do with the Board of Selectmen. Any questions about any of those review, just so people know to remind people from 14 months ago what we approved. Okay.
Mr. Chair, may I add just one additional point?
Sure.
One additional thing that I recall vividly is on the Cemetery Commission, that the language is clarified to mirror Mass General Law, in which they get sole authority over all policies related to the Cemetery Commission. It just clarifies and adds in the word sole.
Let's see. There were no changes at all made to the Cemetery Commission section.
Mr. Chairman,
Madam Town Manager.
there is under powers and duties, the word sole was inserted before responsibility to make regulations governing the care.
Okay. I apologize, Mr. Jeffries, that on my screen, that purple and the black look very, very similar. So yes, they added the word sole. I don't think that, I don't know that was ever an issue, but it is sole now, yes. Okay, any other comments or anything? All right, so Representative, you and your staff will keep us apprised of where that is, and I appreciate you both joining us tonight. Senator Tran, thank you for passing this through in the Senate and for your kind words, all of you, to the chief.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, set review of
Have a good night.
FY20. What? FY20. All you. Hold on. I'll let you say goodbye properly. There you go.
I know, I was muted. Like, I'm just gonna go like this. Yeah, no, thank you. This is a great opportunity. I wanted to, I'm glad we are putting the names to the face here with everyone. I know I've probably met a few of you some time ago. But I just really thank you for the opportunity. I am eager to serve, my district humbly, for this position. I as being the first Brazilian American elected to hold this position, it's a great thing for me. So I just want to say thank you to, to the district and to you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to both of you, I know you're both running for re-election this year, so please make Lunenburg a stop on the way. Always glad to have you both.
Absolutely. In fact, I have to say, in January, I was canvassing and had great conversations with a lot of farmers there, and it reminded, growing up in Brazil, my dad has a farm, and it reminded a little bit of the countryside of my hometown in certain ways. So I love Lunenburg has so much water that I wish Acton did as much as Lunenburg does. But it's a beautiful town, so I certainly would, like to be back there soon. So,
Excellent. Well, thank you both.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I just want to echo that sentiment. I want to thank everyone here for your service to your community, because I serve 11 communities, and without your service to the town of Lunenburg, I wouldn't be successful. So my office is always open to you. My mailbox is always available to you. You can get in touch with me through email, through Facebook, and some of you, and I believe some of you have my personal telephone number. So feel free to text me anytime as well, and feel free to share my telephone number with each other. I'm here to serve you guys. So thank you very much for your service again.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you for your
Thank you.
unwavering support of law enforcement recently.
Always.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so a review of FY20 goals, both selectmen and town manager. So let's start with the town manager goals. Let's review town manager goals for FY20. Well, that's review. Okay, for fiscal year 20. All right, so I'll let you, Madam Town Manager, go through this and just guide us through these updates, or the
Certainly.
latest updates at least.
All right. So I had 3 main goals with different actions for each of those goals for fiscal 20. The first goal was to develop and implement steps towards redevelopment and reuse of 925 Mass Ave. And the first action was to work with council and the tax title attorney to gain a right of entry through the tax title process in order to conduct the environmental assessments. And this was completed, and an administrative search warrant was issued in the fall of 2019. The second action was to explore funding resources for phase 1 environmental site assessment, and based on securing a funding mechanism to hire an environmental consultant to perform the phase 1 assessment. And this was completed in February of 2020. And the third action related to that goal was to explore funding resources for phase 2 assessment, and based on securing a funding mechanism and completion of the phase 1 assessment, to hire an environmental consultant to perform the phase 2 assessment. So MRPC received a $300,000 brownfield site assessment grant from the EPA in June of 2019. And they engaged a qualified environmental professional firm, who they chose Beta, that's the name of the firm, to complete phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessments for communities that received approval for eligible brownfields projects. So in November, we submitted a brownfield site nomination form, and the land use director and I attended a meeting. It's called the Montechusett Brownfields Group. And we had to pitch our project to receive this funding, which we were approved for it. And it was $30,000 to cover the phase 2 site assessment. So that is currently underway. They'll be doing some testing in August, some drilling. They've gone through the proper channels with the EPA. And so we should have a report on the results in September. So that goal was completed. Goal number 2 was implementation of recycling contamination enforcement program. And the action item, the objective of that goal, I want to go into further, was to educate residents on what was recyclable and what's not recyclable and the quality of our recycling program. And this would help save on disposal fees and ensure sustainability of our recycling program. Action 1 was the town manager would work with the DEP regional recycling coordinator, Casella, and the DPW to coordinate all the steps in the recycling IQ kit grant to reduce contamination and recycling. And this included educational mailing, signboards, hiring staff, performing curbside checks, tracking, and a public forum. I applied for and received the Recycling IQ Kit grant that is designed to reduce contamination and educate residents on what can and cannot be recycled. The grant paid for the educational mailings, the signboards, and the staff that performed the curbside checks for a 9-week period. And as part of this process, the audit, there was one conducted prior to the start of the grant program, and then another audit conducted at the conclusion of the program. And the results, we saw a decrease of approximately 12% in our contamination rate. And on January 15th, 2020, I held a public forum on recycling at the Senior Center that included a representative from Casella, the executive director from MassTOS, our regional recycling coordinator from MassDEP, and our hired recycling supervisor paid through with the grant. And we covered an update on the recycling industry, how this affects Lunenburg, the recycling IQ program and how it worked, and just common questions people had about what's recyclable and what's not. And so all of that is you can find on YouTube because Cable filmed that public forum as well. So that goal was achieved. We exceeded our original goal our goal was 10% reduction in contamination. So we exceeded that goal as well. The third goal was to identify, plan, and implement accessibility improvements. And this was to improve access to public buildings, public properties, and roadways. Action 1 was to work with Montechusett Regional Planning Commission and various stakeholders on completing the updated ADA self-evaluation and apply for the Mass Office on Disability Planning grant to complete the ADA transition plan. I applied for and received district local technical assistance from MRPC to conduct an updated ADA self-evaluation, and they're nearing completion on that, the self-evaluation. And I applied for a planning grant through the Mass Office on Disability to complete the transition plan, but we did not receive that grant. So in January of 2020, I submitted an application to MRPC for their 2020 round of district local technical assistance, which was approved in late February. And MRPC staff is still working on this project with an expected deadline by December 31st, 2020. It's been a little delayed due to COVID-19 as well. The second action related to that goal was to review the Complete Streets Prioritization Plan with the board and apply for Complete Streets grant in the fall that aligned with our goal of Complete Streets to provide safety and accessibility for all users of roadways, trails, and transit systems. So along with the DPW director and our engineer, a Complete Streets application was presented in September of 2019 to the board and submitted thereafter. And we received notification in January of 2020 that we were awarded our full request for construction funds totaling $258,460. The third action related to that goal was to identify and complete accessibility projects at public buildings and other town properties that can be paid for with funds appropriated at annual town meeting for fiscal 20. We received a grant to fix the handicap ramp at Town Hall, the amount of $27,000, and this went out to bid in the spring, and that project was recently completed. This makes the ramp ADA compliant, and due to the bids received for a total cost of the project, it required $22,000 to come from our facilities budget. In the fall of 2019, the DPW had the bricks at the Ritter building fixed, so there's now an even surface. If anyone who visits that building will notice. And when MRPC completes the ADA transition plan, this will help inform the town on the accessibility issues that need to be addressed at our facilities. And the ADA public rights of way self-evaluation and transition plan that was conducted by Stantec and presented to the board earlier this year will do the same for sidewalk and ramp compliance issues. And this goal would be to address these these compliance issues by creating a dedicated line item in the budget, which at the beginning of this budget season was included, but due to COVID-19 and the changes in the budget, that was eliminated.
Anybody from the board have any questions for the town manager on that review of her FY20 goals? Mr. Dwyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to goal 2, I think the implementation of the recycling contamination enforcement program is fantastic. Do you have any recommendations for moving forward do you have plans for additional mailings, to try and keep that in front of residents so we don't see us, slip back to the rate we were at previously?
I would like to, yes. So we do receive funding through our contract with Casella for educational purposes. And so we could use those funds, as well as we receive funds through a grant from DEP for the efforts that we already undertake for recycling, that we could use those funds as well to reinitiate that program.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Adams.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Heather. I know when these goals are put out, what's great about them is they're specific, which makes them achievable. I remember there was a conversation about vague goals in the year before, like communication, and you can never really complete communication because it's something that's always present. And so what I really like about having goals like these are these like specific items, and then you can really see the impact of them. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jeffries.
Yes, I want to comment on Heather's third goal. So first, I just really appreciate your focus in this area. Counting up the money, that's $275, almost $80,000. That's not coming from tax dollars. That's coming from your efforts to help better our community. And, that is certainly, above and beyond and really appreciated. And also on the subject itself, I heard something on the radio the other day, and I'm not sure if it was BBC or NPR, but it was talking about accessibility. And we're in a point in our society now where I don't think anyone really questions that, men and women are equal, or people of different skin colors are equal. And so they were saying in this, whatever the conversation was, that we have to think of people with disabilities, and we have to substitute disabled for Black, or for woman, or for Native American, and think then if the person walking out that side entrance, if it was only accessible for Black people, will we have a problem with it? When you have something that's only accessible because people with disabilities that can't come in the front door, and if it was only women then that can go through this side entrance, would we be okay with that? And it's kind of just like getting us into that transitional mind frame that architecture has to be equitable for all, and anything that we do to make it more equitable is so very important. And I, as the selectman in Lunenburg, representing the interests of many members of our community, I certainly just want to thank you for your focus in this area and helping create more equity for people in our community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffries. Just a stickler for accuracy. It's not that the money didn't come from tax money. It did. It just didn't come from Lunenburg tax money. So
Thank you.
It didn't just appear one day on the doorstep. So
Magic money.
Mr. Marino.
Yeah, I just want to support the comments that the other board members made and say that to attain 3 goals, even in a year's time, with running the day-to-day is just mind-boggling to me. I give you a lot of credit for doing that, and this is worth a lot to me to see this. It's busy all day long, and it's great. 3, I wouldn't go any more than that. That's for sure. 3 is plenty.
I agree. I think we kept it to 3, and I think that the town manager's attention to those and making sure that, because as was said, were achievable, could allot time to make sure that they were furthered, and they kept the board along the way. There were a couple meetings during the year where we had mid-year assessments, and that was excellent. So yes, I give all the credit to the town manager for achieving all this, for all the money you brought in, for keeping everybody apprised, yes, of the situation of each of the goals and for their completion. So yeah, it was an excellent job. Excellent job.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's look at the board's FY20 select goals. So I didn't have anything.
Maybe any goals we don't accomplish, we could pass off to Heather for.
Yeah. I'm sure she's gonna pretend you didn't say that.
Well, it could become one of her goals to help us achieve ours.
So our objective number 1, I think we also had 3 goals. So our objective number 1 was to identify, define, discuss, and finalize the criteria to be used in defining the use and the reuse of the following buildings: Town Hall, Ritter Building, Old Primary School, Brooks House, TC Paseo. So we scheduled meetings, and we decided as a board to focus on the old primary school, as other things were happening in other buildings. And because we didn't want to, as had been done in the past, we didn't want to bite off such a big project that it was impossible to do in a year, and just brought us in a dozen different directions at the same time. So we focused on the old primary school. We didn't write a final report, but we determined, I think, amongst ourselves that the primary school and its demolition would be the goal that we wanted to achieve. And I believe, unless there is disagreement with that, that was what we decided upon. There was not a final written report, but it was done at live meetings. And so I think we achieved this goal. The one thing that we need to do, and we'll talk about this when we talk about setting new goals, is to actually put in and get money assigned to get the final quote for its demolition. And we're also going to have to meet with the public, and we're going to have to meet with the Architectural Preservation District to discuss with them our desire to do this and have a frank discussion, because of course they have been very clear and vocal that they would like to see the building preserved. But I think we're at odds with that, because I don't think the townspeople are going to want to spend millions of dollars to spend money on the building. And I don't know that we have the desire in town to invite private entities to do it, because they will want some kind of either lease loan, and that has failed several times. So anyway, I think we achieved this goal, and I think there's more to it to be accomplished going forward to see it to its final end. If that maybe sound a little too dark, but Ms. Adams.
Sure. And, we'll talk about our upcoming goals and everything. And I think, really as I've talked about different things and over the years, I've focused so much on this parcel. It's such an opportunity for enhanced parking in the center of town for businesses and events. We've talked about open green space and everything. And last night I was considering going to a band concert in another community. And I couldn't conceptualize it, so I didn't end up going. Was there a lot of space? Where was the parking? And especially now, I don't like everybody knows I don't like the gazebo area, because there's no parking and there's fast traffic, and it's a hard place to bring young children. But then last night, talking with a friend about band concerts and spreading out in space and all the different ways people see community, I think having an opportunity to create a larger space in town center for things like our band concerts, and when it comes to talking to APDC and comes to talking to the Historical Commission and looking at the risks and that's a healthcare term, but looking at the benefits and of different outcomes. And I think there's a lot that parcel can offer. And then one thing we don't talk about, and this has been something with my municipal land preservation talk, is that it's also a great piece of land. So we don't know what's going to happen with town hall, what's going to get funded. And so long as we have these parcels, that's also a site if we needed to build something like a new town hall. So I really look forward to continuing to work on that piece of land, and at the very least getting rid of the dilapidated building. So it's just, I can't help but give a plug for that piece of land. I can see it. It's already lined with historical sugar maples. Like I walked it, studied it. It's a great piece of land, and it sits there in its most deplorable state. So I think this will be one of our goals for this year too, hopefully.
Mr. Jeffries.
Yes, I would differ in your assessment on our completion of this goal, only because a critical part of it was that we were supposed to bring something to the 2020 town meeting, but I do believe that we got right up to that point. And which
I didn't get to objective 2. That's objective 2, and I would agree with your assessment. I was just on 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I also just want to, I think Selectman Adams has been a really fearless advocate for the environment, for open space. And, we did work through this process, and the vision that Selectman Adams initially presented of there being a green space with parking. And I know, I was like, what about a bigger parking lot with green space? But ultimately, through the process that we worked through, I think it's pretty clear of the way forward is green space in that area. And there seems to be consensus for that, which I wholeheartedly support. And I also would support us continuing this goal to this year. I think that there's, Selectman Adams, and I'm speaking more directly to you, I think that you bring a perspective on some of these things that I don't think about. I don't have children. I don't think about where do you bring them to park. And I never think when there's gazebos, I see the band concerts, but I don't bring children to them. And I think it's so important to, it's so important that we have the voices of many different people of our community speaking for this. But I really think, in light of especially the recent situation with COVID-19, the consideration that people are making for wanting to be in spaces that are a little more spread out, that it just seems even more important than ever that we move forward with actually tearing down the building and building that park.
Okay, I agree. So objective 2,
And Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I have my virtual hand raised.
So now we will hear your virtual voice.
And just so I don't lose track of the momentum in my thoughts and my notes here, another thing, and I was going to talk about it in goals later, but there's, a good fluid conversation here, is we talk a lot about ADA compliance, and having a park space where we have things like band concerts, where there's no parking spaces at all, creates a huge challenge for anybody with a physical disability, whether it's elderly or whether it's having to offload a wheelchair or something. We have this park that we have great events at, but I just see a lot of burdens to using it. And so ever since, it's been a few years now, and it's hard when you can see something in your mind, but you can't necessarily always, get the vision rolling in other people's minds. But with the parking lot on the front end, I see, Thursday night summer concert series and food truck vendors. And another thing, just to where we look at things so differently, people are focusing more on close to home, at least temporarily. People aren't traveling a lot. And so they're really needing to find recreation and things to do in their own community. And so I think setting up a space, and we already kind of do farmers markets in that region, setting up a space where we can keep, bringing people together and giving people good things to do. I think if we set this as a goal and really brainstorm, we have, I think, a really good opportunity.
Okay. Objective number 2, which is kind of got similar, but this was more direct to the primary school. We definitely completed action 1, which was to review the paid studies and review all the data and discuss the applicable costs. Action number 2 was to overlay the results of the previous action with the short and long-term needs of the town. Again, we went through this, we evaluated them. As Mr. Jeffrey said, I think we have consensus that that the majority of the board at the time, and I guess that now that we have 2 members, we'll have to hear, but the majority of the board was in favor of having the building torn down. Had open session with other boards, committees, and commissions and the general public. We had some of those. And we'll have to have more of those, and then determine the project. That kind of got derailed a little bit because of several things, the COVID one being one. Also, it was a little bit premature with the budget, but I have asked in preparation for us setting 2021 goals, asked the town manager to be sure that we need a money allotment for that demolition and for a design of what's going to happen to that building after the demolition. So that is earmarked as one of the things to fit into the next year's budget. Any comments on objective 2? Although I think most of the comments before were on objective 2 inadvertently, because they were very parallel. Objective 3 was to review, discuss, and revise the reappointment process of all annual select board appointments and to formalize that process into policy for distribution. So we were going to review the existing step-by-step, which I believe we did. We also reviewed the charter for the exact list of select board appointments. Number 2 was asked for initial input from the affected appointed bodies. I think this is where we were in the middle of. I don't think we completed this, although I think we did write a draft policy. But we need to continue that. And at this point, we never got to number 3, which was recycle it and make it a final policy. And of course, we didn't, as was noted earlier in the year, when we did reappointments, given the change in everything, meeting in person, boards being able to meet with potential talent bank candidates, kind of messed up the whole thing. So we need to come back to that and finalize those, action number 2, and then finalize 3. That would be a recommendation of mine, but we got up to 2.5. We got to halfway through number 2, I should say, not 1.5 we got of the 3. Any comments on objective 3? Mr. Marino?
Is it possible for me to get a copy of that draft policy just so I can take a look at it?
Sure, I will try to, let me try to drum that up.
Okay.
You still there, Tom?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm writing this down. Apologize. Get the draft appointment policy to the board. Okay. Mr. Dwyer.
I just want to go back to objective 2 on the primary school. I think, as an observer prior to being on the board, it seems like everyone can agree that the primary school should come down, and the sticking point tends to be reuse. So, it's my feeling that we try and break this into achievable pieces. Let's try and get the primary school down first and separate the reuse later. Trying to break the goals down into small achievable objectives rather than try and open it up and then get disagreement that stalls a process.
Okay, well, that certainly sounds like something we're going to discuss. Mr. Marino.
I agree with Todd. And if it came to a vote again, I'm sure it'd be unanimous that building should come down. And I'm all for moving that project forward, no matter what you use. And the open space thing is great. Whatever it is, I'm going to support that. And if I can help somehow move it forward quicker, I'm all in. And the other question I have about it is, are there estimates already on what it would cost to tear it down?
Well, yeah, but they're not. There's some. It's not a complete estimate for the whole thing. We have some things on asbestos abatement, I think, and then there's, we had one of the previous studies talked about the whole demolition, but we'd have to, it's really probably 4 or 5 years old at this time, so we'd probably have to get it requoted.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mr. Jeffries.
Yeah, I think Selectman Adams can probably answer that better than I can, but I do have a comment afterwards.
Okay, but I called on you, so we're not looking for an answer to that. She'll be able to comment.
So my comment is on to Todd. I disagree with that. I disagree with that. I think that we need to restore trust in our community as a board, and I think that tearing down a building and then having an empty lot with no use for it, I think it's going to make people scratch their head and say, well, is that going to look like that for the next 15 years too? So I think that we need to, and from my perspective, we need to combine the actions. If the goal, the process we went through last year with the survey that we did at town meeting, to kind of, figure out where the community was thinking, and it was a ranked choice survey. So, went straight to the audience that would be ultimately voting on this. And it seemed really clear. I think that what the town wanted was more open space in that area. And I think that if we make this a goal for next year, I would like to see a continuation of the dual process. And I believe Selectman Adams can speak more to the rough estimates, because I do believe that when we talked about this, that there were some rough costs that were known, and the only unknowns were the site work to regrade plants and seeds and build a parking lot.
Ms. Adams. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Occasionally I have to go to mute here. And so, yes, it was the TAP A, I think it was 2015. And the figures for demolition at the time were something in the $400,000 to $500,000 range. And then there were a lot of mysteries with the, hazardous waste, which we filled in some of those. So, I mean, I think, we're looking at something that would definitely be under $1 million if you did the demolition plus the regrading, just as sort of like a very, very rough estimate. I completely agree with Selectman Jeffries that we don't want to go asking for this. Let's just say it was $800,000. I see ourselves as, members of municipal outcomes, and so this being a municipal space, a municipal building, and we've done a lot of research and information gathering and charrettes, and it goes back years in the making. And the idea of parking as a necessity always surfaces, and the idea of open space always surfaces. So I don't know why we wouldn't want to bring a good product to the town, especially where if it's done concurrently, it would probably be cheaper, because when you're regrading the space of the construction site, if you have a plan for a park in mind, what you're going to create, it could simply just be grass, and we create an open space. I don't think we want to create rubble or demolition. The demolition site to the public safety building just got paved and improved this year. And I don't know, Chief Marino, what year the old police station was demoed, but that stayed gravel. And so, just a moment. And so I really think we want to focus on creating green space, because it doesn't mean that something else can't be done with the parcel, or if we needed it for a building project in the future. I think we want to focus on creating a nice outcome, even if it's just a lawn. I think it's really a missed opportunity to get caught up in the weeds of thinking there'd be disagreement, because we've done a lot of work. And I think bringing something to town meeting where we have worked on understanding support and vision. If they don't want it, ultimately they can vote the funding down for it. And so I think we need to bring the project as a whole with an outcome. And if it's not the outcome Lunenburg's looking for, they'll vote it down. But we have to stop not bringing outcomes. We need to bring a product and get a yes or no. Because if we keep it vague as we're going to partially do this, we're spinning the same wheel we've spun for years and years. we shouldn't be afraid to go to our legislative body and say, do you like this plan? Yes or no? Then at least we know. If it's a yes, yay, we have a town green. If it's a no, then we see the town doesn't want that as an outcome. We got to bring a product and vote it up or down. I agree with Selectman.
I would alert the members that we're like arguing goals that we haven't set yet. Yeah, but we're not arguing about, this is about what to put on the goals, not to argue the goals. I think there's a very, very important distinction between the
if we
two.
have different goals.
All right, Mr. Marino.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I'm not arguing that at all. I fully agree with that. I would like to get this goal going this year, quickly, get this job done. And I totally agree with that. And I think I was reading Todd's mind, but I assume that's exactly what he meant. Get it done and get the thing done. Get whatever the case may be, make the park, whatever you got to do to make it look good, make it good for the public. That's all. No argument here.
Okay. Well, we'll come back to let's continue. So that's the review of the goals. Now we'll go to a discussion of setting the FY21 goals. And since we're already having this with the selectmen, let's start with the selectmen at this point. So I am all ears about what people want as goals this year. So let's just start, only because we all agreed to some degree, on the old primary school. So what are the goals for this year regarding the old primary school?
Want an open discussion or for us to raise our hands?
Well, as long as people don't talk over each other, you don't have to raise your hand. So if you want to.
I think that the objectives that we set for ourselves last year are a good starting point. I think that we now, what I would add in as, I think the overall objective is good. I think we have the action items that I would add in would be, we need an action of compiling cost estimates for what the project will ultimately cost. I think that would be one action. And prior, maybe the action right before that is the design component, just to get a rough rendering of what the space will look like. So maybe that's the first one. Second action being what that would cost. And then I would keep actions 3 of having the discussions with other boards, keep that one ongoing. That way, we can be made aware of other interests or people who may have some insight somewhere. And then I would also keep action number 4.
Okay, so you're keeping 3 and 4. That makes it easy for me with note taking. And then you want to add
a new 1 and 2.
Get estimates. Well, I think we have to start with 3. I think 3 becomes 1 because that's where we left off. We have to get other people involved. Before we get estimates, we should agree or get consensus about what we're trying to do. Personally, at least, just the ordering of things. Okay. But you want to add getting estimates for the demolition, right?
Yes.
And then you want to get design estimates for new use. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say design estimates. I think that we can have a rough concept. I think it's to procure like a rough vision. I'm sure that there are members of the community who have skill sets in saying, and that could help us out here, but just to get a rough idea of what it will look like.
So put that in action speak. What does that mean?
The action would be to develop some form of rendering for what the space will look like after the building is torn down and with the park there.
Develop rendering of post-demolition use or post-demolition. Okay, just develop a rendering of post-demolition, right? I'll try to word it accordingly. Ms. Adams.
Oops. She's muted, Tom.
Yeah, I know. It takes a second to unmute her.
So, yeah, this develop the post, I think we can define and maybe we have to end up taking some type of vote on this goal, but the rendering of an open space concept with parking. I think we want to define that because especially with respect to the Historical Commission in the APBC. If we are saying we're sacrificing this building, it's in some people's heart. And I certainly have a history of caring a lot about historical items and preservation. And so out of respect for people who have that in their heart as a municipal building, I think we owe it to, in our goal, say, we're not just knocking it down. We have this we'd like to do with it. I think that'll make it easier to discuss and easier to, bring a purpose to its demolition or a purpose to its sacrifice for people who'd like to see it. And so I think we want to define what we're doing. There's a long history of that parcel, lots of discussion over the years. And I myself don't agree with taking it down if we don't establish a purpose. Because it to me just seems like an arbitrary thing to do. I mean, it's a very dangerous building, but there is a path to restoring it. For what purpose? I don't see one for our municipal government because we have too many old buildings we can't take care of. And I think it's a valuable piece of municipal land. So I'm very in favor of the demolition of it with a good municipal outcome. I'm not in favor of demolition of it, so we list the lot for sale. And these are things that can happen. I think we owe it to the town to be very upfront with what our vision is for removing it, because removing it also makes it a lot easier to sell and a lot easier to develop. And that's very disingenuous for people who care about the municipal building.
So what is that in action in objective speak?
Well, it's because what Selectman Jeffries was saying, a rendering, and then we kind of drop off. A rendering of what? And I think it's a rendering of a municipal parking lot with open space. I think I'm very comfortable defining that. I think that's our responsibility to be clear.
So would you be open to making the goal engaging a landscape architect to develop a rendering for green space and municipal parking?
Yeah, exactly. I think that reads very well.
All right, that's goal speak. Engage a landscape.
And Heather, can you remind me, because we've done parking studies and things, do we have a specific data and outcomes on like recommendations and things? I mean, we all know we need parking, but some people like, the reports that we spend money to say so. But we've talked a lot about parking and how that can hopefully enhance, we look at some of these vacant buildings and we have 3-lane caster that's not active again. And somebody who might want to come and invest in the private spaces, I think certainly would be happy to see a good municipal parking lot in the center of town.
MRPC did the walkability and parking study in the last year. So we have that report from Sherry Bean. She presented that to the board. So that we would have that recent one done.
But the professionals agreed we need parking.
The focus was town center and the Whalum area. Those were the 2 priority areas.
Okay, any more on that? I'll write it up, but keep in mind as you offer ideas, I'm trying to put them in the action speak. So if we have long expositories, they're not easy to do. So when you define like, this is what I think a goal should be, that's helpful to me because then it makes it stay on track. So we're keeping actions, number 3 and 4. I may renumber them, but at least we'll keep the ones that are existing there because we definitely want to bring something forward, I believe, for the 2021 town meeting. Anything else on that objective? Okay, we're going to make that objective 1. Okay. So, anybody have any new objectives? I mean, for the old objective number 3, I'd like to finish that and just keep action 2 and 3 and just complete it if the board is okay with that.
I support that.
Yes, I agree as well.
I do too.
All right, so we'll just have action 2 and 3 on objective 3, and that'll be objective 2.
How about the tearing down of the building and obviously using, consulting with the historical aspect of it?
Yeah, we're still gonna keep, right, so if we go, that's the old objective 2, so we're gonna have meetings with, that's the old action number 3. I think that's where we have to start, because I think our vision is to tear it down, and we want to have open sessions with other boards, committees, and commissions, as well as the general public, to tell them what our intent is, or what we do, have a consensus for. And from there, then we can go to what Mr. Jeffries and Mr. Dwyer and Ms. Adams have proposed about getting estimates for demolition, and then engaging a landscape architect to design an open space or town common concept for the property. So we can wordsmith that. I'll try to get that for next meeting, but we can wordsmith that. And then the last action 4 on the old objective 2 was to bring forward a plan. It probably won't be 2, it'll probably be a plan to the 2021 annual town meeting.
I support the preservation of the awkward lion art inside. It's like all I remember as a child. There's this very bright painting of a lion and other animals. It's still in there. I've peeked.
Well, maybe we can do some digital photography of it, because that's what we did with some of the things at the high school to save them. Some of the murals we digitized, and then we could print them at some point in the future. I think they did it with a couple, so we could do the same.
Or we could auction it off complete with its mold spores.
That'd be an interesting auction. Actions. So let's go to new ones. Anybody have any new objectives? We probably could fit at least one more, and if the other one is small, we can maybe get another one snuck in. One of the things I'd propose is, I don't even know how we do this, and it's, I guess, how we measure it is easy, but how we attempt to go about it. But we keep hearing people amongst ourselves, other boards, and people in the public that we're not getting the volunteerism that people for the other boards. There's always lots and lots of vacancies. And I don't know if this is something the board can address, about how we can potentially, get the word out, or motivate people, or reach the right people to serve on some of these boards. They'll go long times with vacancies, and then all of a sudden there'll be a spur of people who come in, and like we did with the finance committee, and now the finance committee is full for the first time in a while. But there's always vacancies. I just offered that. I don't know if we want to tackle that as a goal or not. Silence leads me to believe no.
Well,
Okay.
no, not necessarily. I'm just processing it in terms of not wanting to seem like we're placing people.
No, I just want to know if there's anything we can do to encourage people. Believe me, I've been wrestling with this for 15 years. Do people not volunteer because they don't know about it, because they don't have the time, because they don't have the interest? I don't know the answer to the question. I just know that it periodically comes up where people say, hey, how come we don't have more people? Why can't the town of 11,000 with 6,700 registered voters, how come we can't fill maybe 70 seats in appointed boards and elected boards?
So I think it can be a goal. And I think what it is, I talked about this in a couple of different ways. Like in government, we use a lot of acronyms, and then those become a limitation for people who are trying to follow along. If they, MRPC, we get so comfortable with these things. So somebody listening in is like, I don't understand any of this. Like I had said earlier, I sort of self-taught myself, went to so many meetings, started reading things. I think a lot of it is people may have interest, but not understand how to cross over, because town government is like a self-taught thing. So I think if we really thought about it and did it just like Heather did with the recycling, in terms of there's something missing, and then telling people what it is. So I think if we worked on communication and education about, people don't know what a talent bank form is, so they're not going to go fill one out. We know. So when we say it, we know what we're asking for, but a lay ear hearing, well, just fill out a talent bank form. I don't have any talent. I'm not going to do that. So like, you know, I think talking about communication and education with the specific purpose of increasing involvement is definitely something that if we focused in on would, I think, have a good outcome. We certainly need people.
Rest of the board, does anybody think that's, I mean, I'm not going to feel personally insulted if people say, no, I don't think it's a good goal.
You
That's
got a
fine.
bad goal, Tom.
It wouldn't be the first one I'd have.
I think that's a good goal, but I think it almost dovetails into our second goal of, you know, the reappointment and appointment process for, you know, select board appointed boards. I think we could add that as a sub goal to that. Because in my view, I think the reappointment process is a little opaque at times, and it can discourage volunteerism because of that. People will see people on boards and they don't, you know, when you're on a board, you don't really talk about openings that often. And I think kind of combining that, increasing volunteerism with the reappointment process might be something to consider.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I mean, the old objective 3 was about the reappointment process, not about the appointment process. But I mean, again, it doesn't matter where it goes to me. I just don't know. I mean, the reason I'm hesitant about it myself is only because I don't know what metrics you put in there to do it. I mean, certainly we could develop advertising and social awareness on all different kinds of locations to make people aware of the roles. But I think we kind of do that in a lot of places already, and it just hasn't had the effect. So that.
And we all know that we had a citizen get involved with all of the really extreme amount of vacancies with the lack of the caucus and everything this year. And it was very effective. It was like targeted. This is what we need. Started, you know, giving information. And so, if we can look at some of, you know, the process he used, which was just direct communication, a lot of it through Facebook, which ends up being an avenue for communication, but trying to design it so we're using other formats as well, but with the same approach.
So I'll put it down as a potential addition to that. Which means I have to redefine that objective a little bit, but so maybe add how to encourage more volunteers for vacant seats. Okay, so I would open it up. Does anybody have any other goals?
Can I just make a comment about?
Yes, and I'm going to hold on. Mr. Jeffries, you had your hand up, and I apologize for not getting to you, but it looks like you put it down. Are you still wanting to?
No, I don't have a comment anymore.
Okay. Mr. Marino.
I haven't, you know, being new to this process, you know, my first thought is, my first question, I guess, is when do we discuss these goals? Because my first thought is, in terms of trying to recruit people to volunteer for these boards, is what is the process now in terms of what are we using to accomplish that? So let's look at that and review that. And, you know, when do we do that? When do we review that and say, you know, decide, well, we have to make some changes, and these are the changes we're going to make in order to try to accomplish it in a better way or a more effective way.
Right. So yeah, so the answer, well, the quick answer to your point about when we discuss the goals is after we set them. So I'm hoping we're going to finalize at the next meeting in August. We'll finalize our goals, and then we'll create workshops. Usually, a lot of times the last Tuesday of the month, instead of having a televised meeting, sometimes we'll have workshops. Sometimes our televised meetings will also be a workshop, depending on what the agenda workload is.
Mm-hmm.
But throughout the year, we'll do it. To answer your second question about what our current process is there is no current process. We announce, town manager announces vacancies every week. They're, I think, posted. Are they on the website, Madam Town Manager?
Yeah, we try to update that.
Yeah, and we encourage people to fill out talent bank forms, but that's it. There's no established active process. It's much more of a passive process up until now.
Okay.
Madam Town Manager, you have your hand up.
Just, I know it's not my goal, it's the Board of Selectmen's goal. I just wanted to add my own personal experience and ask each of you and other members of committees and boards how they got involved. I know 20 plus years ago, I got involved in town government because of a friend of mine was the chairman of the Conservation Commission and they needed someone. So he reached out to me, put me on the spot and said, you know, town needs volunteers. And that's how I initially got involved. And I'm sure that's how a lot of people do. It's word of mouth a lot of the time. And having someone you know that has that experience as well, I think goes a long way as far as recruiting new people. But how to, you know, maybe just tapping into everyone who is currently involved on town boards, you know, why they got involved.
Okay, you can ask that, sure. It's leading me to believe, Todd, that this is going to be a separate goal, that it really won't have to do with the reappointment, only because it'll have separate pieces of it. But I'll try to word that so it's acceptable to everybody. Mr. Jeffries.
Yeah, I'll make a comment. So I wanted to hear more of the discussion before offering anything. And I think that, you know, Heather, I think what you just said was dead on. You know, I remember I went to Bob Ebersol's house because I had a problem and I didn't know what to do and where to go. I never met the guy before and I knocked on his door randomly. He's probably like, who is this weird person at 7 o'clock at night I've never met before? And after talking to him, he just said, hey, have you ever thought about volunteering for any of this? And I'm like, I don't know how any of this really works. So no. But I think that initially when you mentioned this, Tom, my thought was kind of like, nah, like, but as we discussed this more, I think that we probably do need to do some kind of outreach. That a lot of people, I think, aren't informed on what is involved. They don't know that these are unpaid positions. You know, they don't know that they can give back very easily, and that most elected officials are not going to get, you know, we're not in scandalous roles, and for the most part, you know, it's selfless service, and no one probably knows you're even doing it. So I think that I'm supportive of this being a separate goal, with action items, since you're going to ask me, of, you know, increasing outreach to the community. And it's hard to measure this, but I think that we can set a goal of, you know, 5%, less than 5% vacancies in all town positions. I don't know if we're already at that, but that seems to be fair.
Okay. I'm writing, so okay. Mr. Dwyer.
Kind of a different vein that I've been thinking about is when I first started in getting involved in town government, I got appointed to the Conservation Commission. And for a number of years, Paula Bertram came to our meetings as a select board liaison. I think that might be another goal to achieve, to kind of reestablish select board liaisons at a number of the other meetings in town. The benefit is, during my time on Conservation Commission, we've had a number of projects come up that have been controversial, and often you hear from citizens, they complain that there's a disconnect between boards. And I think some of that disconnect could be solved by having liaisons on different boards, planning board, Concom, and others. So that's just another thing I was thinking about that we should consider as a goal to increase select board involvement or with the other boards.
Okay. By the way, I couldn't agree with you more. I was very dismayed when the practice was halted of
We
selectmen.
stopped liaising.
Right. I mean, I don't remember the reasoning, and I'm sure they had good reasons back then. I don't want to project anything, but I thought when it was established many years ago, probably 10 years ago, it really helped promote that inter-body communication. And I think that it now has become separated now that nobody's doing the liaisoning. And we have to define what that means, because it became in many parts that the selectman liaison became part of the meeting. And that is also not the point. We can discuss it further, but at that point it was to be the ears of the Board of Selectmen and reporting back, not to interact with the board in how to direct their meeting or offer anything. It was really just to listen at the time. And some people got more active in it, and that, I think that's what led to it being abandoned. Ms. Adams.
Yeah, some of the history, and I didn't support removing, having a liaison, but the reasoning was about whether or not, the person in the role had a bias, towards something and would be there communicating or advocating on behalf of something. And indeed, it could be difficult. Like when I was pretty sure before it got discontinued, but I sort of stayed one on my own because there was a lot of things with like marijuana and stuff. I'd go to planning board meetings, and it becomes confusing if I'm there as a selectman liaison to communicate or be the ears, but then I'm also there as a citizen because I'm following through a project on my own. And so I think that is something that if we set it as a goal to talk about, because it certainly places you in the crosshairs of all the other conversations going on at a meeting, and becomes nearly impossible to not feel yourself involved as a citizen, if it's school committee. And so I think that was the concern, is that people became specifically engaged, which is a great thing, but were they there as a citizen or there as a selectman if you public commented? I would say I'm public commenting as a citizen tonight, and things like that. And so I think that's the history of whether or not being a liaison was complicated, and how to fill the role in terms of acting there, not as a selectman representative, but oftentimes as an individual. So that's sort of the history of the confusion of the role.
I also don't know, Mr. Dwyer, maybe it'll be a short goal, but we also could put it as an agenda item. And I don't know that it's going to take multiple meetings to do. We
Sure.
can probably decide it in the meeting, but I've written it down to potentially doing it. But either way, I want to address it, whether it's in a goal or just an agenda item. I think it's important. Mr. Jeffries.
Yeah, I think we still do liaise with with library, because they requested, so I speak to them, and Council of Aging. But I think that if I recall, some of the other part of the discussion here was also about the time commitment for selectmen. I think that as I recall part of this discussion, I do think that we may need to have it. There was some concern about what exactly it means, but it's also that we want to invite people to participate, and it's a lot more difficult to appeal to people who are parents, who are young professionals, if they also have to pick up, 5 or 6 other additional duties on top of the weekly duty for the select board. I think that, we all have additional responsibilities and duties, but I think that was the concern, was just that it would be too much time. And as an alternative, I think that what we were trying to work on was to meet with like a representative from boards on some kind of rotational schedule. That either us going to them or them coming to us, that would be an easier way to make us kind of stay all in the loop.
Well, I think for the time commitment to address that, I don't think it's it's intended now that all these meetings are televised. Then it's not, used to be you have to go to the meeting. That's the only way you'd see it, especially like for myself, I don't have cable. But with all the meetings televised and online now, you don't have to go to the meeting. The whole goal would be in fact, it may even be better not to go to the meeting, just to know what was being discussed at the meeting, to report back to the board. For instance, we had a public comment today, and I happened to see that meeting that happened in at the Conservation Commission. So again, I don't want to inject myself in that. I just want to be aware of it so we can bring it to the board and say, this is what's going on over there, in case something gets it rises that we think is going to come to us or go somewhere else, that it's not on track. That's all. Any other? So I'm going to try to work that in as a goal, or we'll put it as an agenda item, but I'll bring it back on the 4th. Ms. Adams.
Okay, I wrote down a goal in regards to continuing work on ADA compliance. I worked on this in the past, and it's a new board, so maybe they have a new point of view, and resuming anyways. So right now it's not an issue. I don't really like the meeting space of the second floor of the town hall. Whether it's the stairs are cumbersome or the lift isn't great. There's extension cords on the floor. And so I was hoping with all the other buildings in town to explore an alternative meeting location for selectmen's meetings or other meetings. The main limiting factor when I first brought this up a couple years ago was that the cameras and the live broadcaster set up in town hall, which now, here we are in this abstract world where we've resolved, not using the cameras there, and yet here we are still together. So, there's the nice room at the Eagle House. If it's vacant in the evenings, usually you have a situation where there's the push button door opening, some handicap parking, and things like that. And so I guess the goal would be to look for places for improved ADA compliance that don't necessarily require large amounts of funding. And so we look for these big things or these big projects down the pipeline that will improve, but might not happen for 5-10 years. So the goal I put down was to work on ADA compliance with things that have immediate action potential. The key being looking for alternative meeting space.
For
selectmen and other committee meetings, ones that take place in the second floor of town hall. There's got to be a better place to meet.
Okay, well, I think we certainly have control over our meetings. I don't know that we have control over other boards' meetings. They get to decide where we can recommend, but we can't finally determine where they meet. So,
who's in charge of that, Heather? Who meets where? Do you know?
The boards choose. Each of the boards and commissions choose where they're going to meet and when they're going to meet.
Okay, and maybe it's an agenda item versus a goal.
That's what I was going to say. I think it does.
Really want to get out of the second floor town hall, and here we are. We haven't been going up there, and we've sort of reinvented the wheel with COVID. But I think it's time to let the community have access to a better space. The library is pretty limited, and those rooms are booked. I think the room in the Eagle House, there's been meetings hosted there before. We've done workshops in the community spaces in the middle high school, which, doesn't typically have students at night. But, I think in the meantime, while we solve other larger problems, this is a small accessibility problem. And I've personally helped and witnessed somebody trying to access the second floor, and it wasn't a situation with a lot of dignity. And I just don't know why, where we have other spaces, we can't creatively, with really spending probably little to no money, with the exception of a little bit of technology changes. And we see how quickly we all adapted to this. I think we can adapt to using new space that can bring better accessibility. In the meantime, if there was a real... I
understand your point. I think we've discussed this with a previous board. If you want to bring it up as an agenda item with a new board, I will certainly do that. But
sure, it's also a goal. That's why I threw it out. I've been working on it.
I think it's an agenda item. So I don't think okay. Well, that's a personal goal. Fine. But all right. So we can put that as an agenda item. Madam Town Manager, can you put on the agenda item list? Yes. Just add that, and we'll try to get to that. We should be able to get to it, in probably no more than a month, I would say. So, all right. Any other goals?
Yeah, I have another goal / maybe it's an agenda item, and this goes with the open space town green. And it's a little premature, but people have brought it up, and maybe they meet yearly for a couple of years and then kind of ramp it up. But one of the things when I talk about the open space or town center improvements is our tricentennial is in 28. it's really not too far away. And so over the years, things go by so quickly. As a board each year, I don't know if we want to, set up a little tricentennial committee at some point so that we maybe have something really exciting. Or, if you see the pictures and they used to do the buntings and all over the town buildings, if we want to have a really great 300th birthday, I think fundraising and vision would start early, and we might be able to weave it into some of these other things like the old primary goal. So I just wanted to bring up that we're almost 300.
So tricentennial committee. Anybody?
Yes. It doesn't need to be a goal, but
Okay. I will remind you that we are talking about goals, right?
I know these are all woven into my, it's just.
This is not, I don't mean, they're just, obviously everybody has a stream of consciousness, things they'd like to have done. And I just want to make sure that people separate them. And yes, we can make that again, an agenda item. I'm perfectly for the tricentennial committee. It makes perfect sense. I think we could probably ring that out in an evening, if not two, and just decide who is going to be on it. Hand off the.
Yeah, I was just going to say it'll also be my goal to be on it.
Okay, well,
That'll be okay.
again, I think that's fine. I'm all for the tricentennial committee. The 275th was a great celebration. I think this is a good time to begin that. They have 8 years of time to come up with plans, and so I think it's just an establishment of a tricentennial committee, which I'm perfectly for. So I personally think it's an agenda item.
Sure.
But it does achieve your goal. Okay, any other agenda goals for the board? And I'm going to leave it at those three. So we're going to keep the primary school and finish that out, complete the reappointment, and then we're going to do the liaison, not the liaisons, that's an agenda item. We'll do the encouraging more talent bank forms and vacancies, how to encourage that. So that's objective number 3. I will try to write these up in a format like the ones that we had this year so we can agree or disagree or wordsmith as we see appropriate. Okay, town manager goals for FY21.
So I kept it to 3 goals with different action items for fiscal 21 as proposed goals. The first one would be a continuation of the goal to redevelop and reuse 925 Mass Ave, which I think this is an important goal that I'd like to see followed through to the end, use of that property. It's, as I mentioned last year, it was when I first came to town, when I was interviewing for the position, I noticed that property right away, and I really think it would be great for the community to see that property revitalized. So the actions would be for the town manager to work with town council and tax title attorney to finalize the foreclosure of the property once the full results of the environmental site assessment are known. So we've been holding off, it's under foreclosure, but we've been holding off on pulling the trigger because of the unknown aspects of what's beneath the ground and in the building as far as any cleanup costs. So once those results are known, we'll have our next step in place. The second action would be if the results of the environmental site assessment indicate cleanup costs are necessary, the town manager will work with Mass Development on funding mechanisms available to clean up the property in order to get the property back on the tax rolls and in use as another viable business. The third action related to that goal is the town manager will work with relevant staff, town committees, and boards to explore whether auctioning the property or putting out a request for proposals for reuse of the property will address the future reuse of the property. Do you want to stop at each goal? Or?
Yeah, we'll open it up each time and see if anybody has any instead of waiting at the end. So does anybody have any questions about this one? I personally am in favor of this. I think most of the town can't wait for something better to come out with the 925 Mass Ave. Miss Adams.
No, I was just going to say I really like this goal of Heather's because I think it connects well with our goal of old primary. If we take a couple of these old, dilapidated buildings and get them fixed up all at once, I think the Tricentennial Committee will really appreciate it.
Okay. Agreed. Anybody else? Okay, number 2.
Second goal, to enhance facilities management and maintenance. And the objective is to look at the feasibility of creating an independent facilities department and improve the long-term maintenance and repair plan for town facilities. Action 1 would be to review the current organizational structure and determine if a reorganization that separates facilities from the Department of Public Works would create greater efficiencies, and then follow the process in the town charter as required for any reorganization. Action 2 would be that the current facilities director utilizes a program called School Dude, which is a computerized maintenance management software for building users to schedule repairs or other building related issues. And I would work with the DPW to look into other modules offered by School Dude that would be used to create preventative maintenance schedules and asset management that would inform also as our capital planning process, which is a long-term solution for facilities. And I just want to note this in no way, I think the facilities director does an outstanding job. So this in no way is any deterrence from, the job that he does for the town.
Okay. Whatever you do in that regard, and I am again for this, so this has been discussed in various manners, various perspectives. I would say that we want something that there should be some kind of reporting tool part of this, so that we have, for instance, quarterly reports about what things were done, what is projected to need to be done going forward. I think Mr. Jeffries has talked about that. I think those could be helpful tools. I don't want to overburden the person doing it, but I also don't want to underreport assets that the town has ownership of, so that people can know at a glance what's going on with certain buildings and facilities.
Yeah, I'm not sure all the capabilities of School Dude, if that would be something that could be used to create quarterly reports as well, but
that would be the only addition I would look for. Anybody else, any comments?
I would support this goal like 150%. And I don't think I have to say any more.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard. Well, you could go to 160%. I guess.
Well, I could, and I would.
Mr. Jeffries. You're muted. Hold on a second.
Thank you. And Heather and I had the opportunity to speak about this prior to the meeting, and I wholeheartedly support this goal. We talked about as well different CMMS, which is different computer modules, and computerized, I think, management software. I'm forgetting what the other M stands for. And we did talk about School Dude, and there being other options out there, eMate being one of them, but I know that that's a bit weedy. But that there are programs, to your question, Tom, that do provide a lot of resources for facility management. And I know School Dude, I'm familiar with them, but there are also other programs that are geared towards municipal infrastructures that would be helpful. And that do generate those computerized quarterly reports. They send you, especially with the new 5G technology, if that's integrated into some of the stuff, you'll get notifications when there's equipment issues, when there's problems in different areas. So it definitely, the computerized maintenance, moving in that direction certainly is an opportunity for the town to save a lot of money down the line and to centralize control. And I think this is exciting, and I look forward to this goal.
Excellent. Okay. Goal number 3. This is the one that makes me nervous. Succession planning. What are you planning?
Not my succession yet, but so the goal is succession planning, and the objective is to identify strengths and weaknesses within the organization that will inform town management on long-term strategies to fill key positions. Action 1 would be to develop a working group of managers and mid-managers to identify the key critical positions assess the bench strength of current personnel, training opportunities for existing personnel to develop their skills in positions that do not have a backup. Action 2 would be to complete the continuity of operations plan. That will be a written document that identifies key personnel, their backups and functions in order to provide continuity of services during emergencies, such as Action 3 would be to identify outside resources and recruitment strategies to use when internal candidates do not exist for key positions, and as a long-term planning tool for addressing the lack of qualified individuals with municipal experience.
And that makes absolute administrative sense to me. It's actually kind of surprising that we don't have something like that already in place, but now that you've identified it, now I see the glaring hole there. I'm glad you're filling it.
And there are some departments like the police department that's done a really good job of doing just such that, as we see in the personnel that has filled key positions, such as the interim police chief position. So we can work off that as best practice as well.
Excellent. Any other comments on that?
No, I unfortunately had to step away for a call, but on action, if I can just ask a question on Heather, did you make any adjustment in wording to action item 1 for the first goal? Because it seemed to be, I thought that was already accomplished. The town manager worked with town council, the tax title attorney.
No, so the action 1 in fiscal 20 was to gain right of entry to the property. I worked with town council and the tax title attorney to gain the right of entry so we could do the phase 2 site assessment because we needed permission to enter the property.
Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
All right, so I don't think there were any objections unless you want. I mean, I'm more than happy with the way this is. I did make some recommendations about reporting in goal number 2, but we could vote on this now and have you make that modification, or you can make the modification as you see fit, and we can vote on it in August, what is it, 4th? 4th. So why don't we do that? Let's vote on it August 4th. We won't review it. We'll just see the changes if you want to make any in goal number 2 regarding reporting, and then we can quickly do an up and down vote at that point. That sound okay, Madam Town Manager?
Yes.
Okay, and at the August 4th, I'll have the goals that we talked about. I will try to type them up and have them ready in advance so you guys can review them, and hopefully we can wordsmith through them and accept ours too, make any changes and get all the goals done by August 1st, which I think may be the shortest time we've ever done them in. So that would be good. Before we leave, anything else on goals? Okay, approval of minutes. We have minutes of, did we have any approval of minutes? I think there was some going around from May 5th. I think let's wait till August 4th for that, because there were like 3 different revisions of the May 4th meeting or May 5th. Warrants. I signed 3 warrants last, no, 2 warrants last week. An accounts payable warrant in the amount of $247,906.60, and another accounts payable warrant in the amount of $1,819,940.05. Action file issues.
Yes. Mr. Chair, to the town manager, can we get an update just on where we're at with the fuel tanks?
That was approved by the Conservation Commission, the NOI. The engineer is working, and I believe he has all the bid documents ready to put out to bid.
Okay.
Okay, committee reports. I don't think any committees are Having other meetings, all right. No old business. Upcoming meetings, our next meeting is August 4th, so no meeting next week. We want to give the chief a chance to settle into being just a citizen again. So there's no town manager or COVID update this week, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I believe there's only one additional case locally in town on COVID, so.
Yes.
So I think that makes it 71 total. Public comment from the public. I see someone has dialed in. I don't know who that is. I want to take the chance and unmute them. Whoever is on the phone, did you have public comment?
I did, Tom. This is Dave Rogers, 82 Highland Street.
All right, *9 in the future, Dave, raises your hand so I could see it. But I figured a phone call at this time probably wanted public comment.
Okay, thank you so much. My question is to the town manager. When you were reviewing the objectives and the goals and the things that were completed, Madam Town Manager, I thought that I heard you say, which is the question, that the grant for the handicapped ramp at the town hall was $27,000, and in addition to that, we allocated $22,000 from the facilities budget for the completion of that project. My numbers, did I hear that right?
That is correct.
Okay, so in the aggregate, that amounts to $49,000 for a handicapped ramp. That to me just seems like an awful lot of money. So I was wondering if we went out to bid, how much of that is, it just seems like an exorbitant amount of money for me.
Mr. Chairman?
Madam Town Manager.
We did go out to bid. It was required to go out to bid. And we received, I think it was 7 different bids, and that was the qualified low bidder.
Wow. That just blows my mind. I just think that's an awful lot of money for a ramp. But obviously you went through the right procedures, but I just couldn't believe the number. But thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Mr. Jeffries.
Yes, I think my comment really is more of a question that should have been under action items, which is, are we planning, when do we plan to start meeting again in person or having meetings in person in town? Because it seems like we're talking about opening schools and having teachers meet with classrooms of children. And I'm just wondering when we plan on doing the same.
Right now, we're not ready. The cable and PAC, they're working, PAC and IT are working on a solution to do both a hybrid type meeting in person with Zoom, which at the town hall. So that would be our only location. We're limited by occupancy of number of people in an enclosed space right now under phase 3 of the guidelines. And so there's that concern, as well as the ability to clean the space after meetings occur is another concern. So we did have a task force meeting yesterday to discuss a kind of slow opening of facilities to the public. So with reduced hours open to the public, just to ease in to see how things go. So that hopefully will be happening the week of August 3rd. That will start that. And then, I'll update the board as we go along. I know people are anxious to get back into a regular meeting environment. Unfortunately, we're just not there yet.
Mr. Marino,
We're on public comment, right? Still, Mr. Chairman?
well, Mr. Jeffries said that should have been an action item, but let's just say that's public comment.
All right, I want to make a comment as the police chief, if you would allow me to. Just an announcement.
Sure.
So the DPW director and I have been working together to erect speed limit signs around town. A year or so ago at town meeting, the new speed limit laws were approved, which allows me to change speed limits down to 25 miles an hour under certain criteria. And I guess the long and short of it is in thickly settled areas. So the residents are going to start seeing these zones, 25 mile an hour zones in certain thickly settled areas. We've installed signs on Howard Street, in a section of Howard Street. We installed what's called another type of zone, is a safety zone, and we can do that in front of parks and recreation areas, which the town beach falls into that criteria. So we put a 20 mile an hour zone just in front of the town beach. And you'll see that the zones have a beginning and ending sign. So this particular one is probably less than it's probably around an eighth of a mile or less, but there's a sign that says, speed zone and end speed zone, so that people aren't confused by it. So after the 20 mile an hour zone, they can go back up to the posted speed or the proper speed. So next is Highland Street. After that will be a short piece of the new developments on Reservoir Road, and so on and so forth. And I just want to tell people that obviously we have to enforce that. It's enforced exactly the same way that any speeding violation is enforced. So I'd like them to observe those speed limit signs for the safety of the public. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Adams. Oh, hold on.
I'm sorry. I wish I could unmute myself. A little bit of background noise. First of all, thank you for the chief for the signage, especially setting up like safety zones at the town beach this year. It might be more lightly used, but certainly that's a dangerous spot, especially when it's paved, which that's fine, but that's awesome. And then I don't necessarily think this is a public comment, and I don't know if this goes to the chief or Heather, but like everybody loved that there was some improvements to the intersection at Walmart. And so I just wanted to file my next complaint for the DOT. If anyone wants to pass it along, there, the lineage is gone. So if you are taking a left out of Walmart and heading back up 2A, there's no lines that designate that there's two lanes. And I feel like it's already at kind of a bad spot. And if I don't know if they have a plan or who looks into that, but I've had a couple strange feelings where people have lost sight of the two lanes and are going very fast.
That should be on an annual schedule to get painted, so you should see that soon, but I can make a phone call, I think, and try to confirm that, but that's typical. It's usually on a yearly schedule. I saw it myself the other day. Everything is worn out right now.
Yeah, it's a tricky spot, and I can see a problem happening because of it. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll look into it.
Any other public comment from the board? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I have a thank you. All right, Mr. Dwyer, let's roll call vote. Mr. Dwyer.
Aye.
Ms. Adams.
Aye.
Mr. Marino.
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries.
Aye.
And an aye for myself. We will not be back until August 4th. Until then, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Good night.
You as well. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.